Namaste from the Swatantra party again. I want to talk about the GST, Goods and Services Tax. In 2017, the Government of India implemented the GST, brought it into the taxation system in the midnight, like how we got the independence on August 15th, 1947 in the midnight. This midnight things don't work. I don't know, it's more of a hype that Mr. Modi did as a Prime Minister. Paying taxes, yes, I'm always for it, because unless we pay taxes, this country cannot run, or we need to contribute to the revenue of the country. But are these taxes justified? The rates and the slabs. The GST was brought about with so much of hype that Mr. Modi said, good simple tax, and he said one tax, one country. But it was so contradictory that if he had a conscience, if it was really a one tax, one country, then it's almost 4 years now. He has still not done away with the excise and VAT on the fuel and the liquor, and we still have that going separately. And when they introduced the GST, they had almost about 6 or 7 slabs. I stand corrected because I know there were various slabs. And what was very surprising was that the Government of India was taxing the jewelry people only 3% GST, whereas the physically challenged people, who had to use their calipers or whatever those chairs, the physically handicapped, whatever they use, different various things, were being charged 18% GST. Was the Government of India justified in that? Did they have ever a conscience that these poor people who are already physically challenged, that they have to pay such a huge GST 18% on these products? No, I don't think so. It was justified, and Mr. Modi, if you really have a conscience, you have to accept it. After the GST, the Government of India faced a few elections in various states, and whenever they lost and wherever they lost, they sort of tried to do away with some of these GST slabs. Why? Didn't you know that when you implemented itself, it was like a joker's game, like, so many slabs. See, we are a poor country with, I won't say poor country, we have extremes of poor and rich, okay? And, okay, you could have had 2 slabs, a 3% or a 5% and a 15% fine, or a 14% or 12%. You had a 3%, you had a 5%, you had a 8 or 10%, then you had a 12%, 18%, 28%. 28%, we were the highest taxpayers in the world as far as this GST goes. And we have seen that wherever most of the countries, the GST actually has failed. We need to pay taxes, that whichever form, some form, we have to pay the taxes, and the taxes has to be reasonable. It cannot be bloodsuckers. I mean, you cannot be sucking your blood and you all your work effort is paid in taxes. Mr. Jaitley late Mr. Jaitley, when he was the finance minister, first thing is, these governments, these political parties, when they make these lawyers as finance ministers, they are being stupid, because many of them don't even have any knowledge of the economy, or don't have any knowledge of running an industry, or so many things, that a Jaitley becomes a finance minister, Chidambaram becomes a finance minister. See, these people, yes, you take them in commerce, you take them in law, you take them in anything, but finance minister, I think a man with experience. Economists, some of them also fail. Not all economists are practical. They are more theoretical. Most economists are theoretical. They don't have the practical knowledge. For example, here you have in the GST for buying land and building, you are paying GST plus you are being charged GST and plus also a land registration tax by the state government. Isn't that two tax, Mr. Modi, that when you said we are simplifying the taxes and we are bringing it under one tax, one country, one tax? This is contradictory. Most of you politicians don't realize that you are contradicting your own statements. You are not being realistic, because tax, yes, but not kill the people with your taxes. There was so much of anger built up, and then you're saying that there was no sales, or you need to develop for example, we'll take one sector first, the automobile sector. Why did the automobile sector really, from 17 to 20 today, the sector is in one of the worst situations? Many people have stopped buying vehicles because of the GST, which is 28%. That is, farmer also pays 28% for the tractors. A small village or middle class or a poor boy who wants to buy a bike also pays 28%. And the big limousines with the Benz or the Rolls Royce also pays 28%. Is there any justification? So there is no movement. Why there is no movement? Because of the huge taxes, and people are waiting to see if you would reduce, because you did it. You did it by when each time you failed in a state, you reduced the tax, or you did away. Like you were having 18% in the restaurants, then you brought it to 5% for the small restaurants, and you made it 18% for the restaurants with the AC. That itself it's like a Tughlaq regime, like contradicting all that what you are saying, you are implementing, then changing. That itself shows that somewhere you are failing, you are wrong, which you don't have the humbleness to accept. And you're also egoistic, you politicians, arrogant, that you don't want to accept your failures. Forget it, we are not bothered, but we know, as public, we know you don't have the, you're not humane even to accept your faults. So leave it. So why the automobile sector failed? Because of that. And the automobile sector, the input, so many inputs are being put, and each one at different rates. And the small suppliers to the bigger companies, to the OEMs, like when the small supplier is supplying, he is also charged heavily, and the input costs are getting high. So your taxes are only going up and up, and how would you be able to compete with China? You're talking Atmanirbhar now, but didn't you know this in 2014? You came up with this big slogan of Make in India, Made in India, with the big lion and all that. You have failed very badly. It is possible, yes, I am for it. I am for Make in India. Why did you make China a big devil of a country? Because that country was producing products at very cheap prices, because they had cheap labor, they had cheap electricity, the interest rates were very less compared to India especially, and then their wages. These communists talk a lot of things in our country when it comes to wages, but in China, there they are like slaves, being treated like slaves, and these same communists won't talk what they are doing there is wrong. So it is all a big drama by the politicians who are forever, taking the country in the wrong direction. The GST is, I'm not there to say whether GST is a good tax, bad tax, no. Tax, yes, we need to pay, I'm for it. But paying the government, again getting a refund, why all this drama? It's all a waste of time. The small traders have that money blocked with you all, and to get back that money, they have to again grease the local officer to get back their money. Why all this circle running, Instead of that, why don't you make these filing these taxes easier. Okay. Second thing, the real estate. Real estate, you all are just giving sanctions for buildings and buildings for all the big builders who are coming and greasing you. People who don't grease you don't get sanctions. People like me will never get. Okay. So these buildings, like whether you have a need, you don't, and then they are borrowing it from the bank, and the banks are giving huge loans to the builders because again there's a commission involved there and they get it. See, in the real estate, the first thing is, for example, the builder is paying a huge price for the land. Then he applies for the sanctions. There's a delay because again it is greasing. The state government, the officers are so corrupt, they delay. So there he loses a lot of interest in his capital which he has invested. Then he gets a sanction. Again he has to pay some portion as grease money for every square foot that he is building to the concerned local administration minister, to the member secretaries of the different, like for example, the MMDA and the planning, there's a planning authority, local planning authority, LPA. Every officer is corrupt. Okay. So there he spends some money and then delay of time. Then when he is going to sell it, the buyer is paying a land registration tax plus a GST. Why these two taxes? And why can't you reduce this land registration tax? In one state it is 2%, in another state some percent here, in Tamil Nadu is 11, 12, 13%. So where does the common man, see, you don't look at it about all the rich people. There is a middle class and there is a lower class and the upper middle class who can't afford this many taxes, this huge. So there's a slump. So nobody is buying, expecting that there will be a change in the taxations. So the real estate is hit. Then the traders are hit because their money, the turnover money or whatever money they got, they are paying the GST and then they have to get back refund. The refunds don't come back on time. Why this refund at all? Why don't you bring a system where they say everything and then they deduct and then they pay? But again, the people also. There are a lot of people who cheat, who don't give the actual accounts. Mr. Modi, you think that because you bought the GST and all the demonetization that the black money has gone? No. There are so many lawyers, so many other people who are still taking their fees only in cash. There is no GST for it. And everybody avoids these checks. They force us to give only cash. Whom do I go and complain? Will you take action immediately if I give a complaint that so and so person took money from me as cash for fees? Will you take immediate action in 24 hours? No, I have to run behind you and I have to prove. And then the corruption money in the courts, it's all paid by cash. Okay. And everywhere, see, I know all you, it's not that you don't know, Mr. Modi, that all your projects are hyped and a 10 crore project is made into 50 crores, a 50 crore into 100 crore. You get the kickback, the ministers get their kickback, the officers get their kickback. So where does all this go? You mean to say there is no corruption? There is. With your demonetization, it is a good proposal, but you have goofed it up 200%. Your implementation was absolutely a big farce. There was so much of farce about your implementation. You caught some of the Tamil Nadu bureaucrats and contractors, but what follow-up action was done? Nothing. And these very fellows again get into all the big committees, get onto the temple boards. My God, the gods, like I think the corona is a good punishment for us people because you put all these corrupt people into the boards of temples and you think they will keep quiet, that they won't loot the temples. That is why I think the gods got fed up and said, to hell with all of you all, don't visit us, we don't need money, we don't want. And there is, even now, you're spending so much of money in the Ram Mandir. Yes, I'm a staunch Hindu, but you need not waste this much of money. God never asked us to build such big temples because already the huge temples today in this country, the old kings built it. I'm not there to blame them. They did it with a good heart, in the sense, those days the temples were like asylums, or when there is a natural disaster, people came and took shelter there. But today these temples are not being maintained, kept clean. So it's better to build a small place, and then that money can be used for some hospital or a good education university, where you can give the deserving people who can't afford free education and free health services. Not wrong. I am not for any other free, like giving free rice, free this, free money. No. Education, yes. Health services, yes. So the GST, coming back to it, it is so badly implemented, and then many of us laymen, we cannot all of us afford to get an auditor for this, and the auditors fleece us with their big fees. And for the rental, you're charging a GST. Suppose the rent person, my lessee doesn't pay me my money, the rent. What happens, I cannot pay a tax for the money which I didn't receive. So suppose we fail 1 month because he has not paid, because we are also naive, we don't know what is the thing what to file. And when we fail, they immediately take GST out, and when we go back and ask them, we want to pay the tax, but then your GST is cancelled, and that is another harassment. We don't know where to go. We go to so many places, nobody is there to answer us. And now when they did open up, they're saying you have to pay a fine. Why should I pay a fine if my tenant doesn't pay me my rent? Where do I pay you the GST? And suppose I pay and he doesn't pay and he runs off, why should I pay tax for some money which I have not received? So this whole thing is very badly implemented. Then I'm also paying a TDS, I'm paying a GST. Why so many taxes? So why don't you simplify this whole thing? See, every one of us make faults. There's nothing wrong to go back on something, roll back, I am not a great fan of Manmohan Singh or P. Chidambaram or any of the Congress people. But then, when the GST was actually brought about, when they wanted to bring it, you made such a hue and cry saying that over my dead body this tax will be. But when you did it, it is all right and perfect. That is not correct, Mr. Modi. You should be fair in whatever you do, that all of us can go wrong. You can go wrong, I can go wrong, but accepting that wrong is what is more humane than being arrogant, acting like as if you don't know anything and you are the Harishchandra Prabhu of all things. No, it's not correct. So when Mr. Manmohan Singh wanted to introduce, he was only going to have it as 10 or 12 or 14%, one slab. Why is that your government introduced 6-7 slabs, then you changed and you changed, you brought about so many changes that itself was confusing for the people. Even now it's not too late. Why people are not buying? Because of all these confusions, these taxes, and added to that, the corona has come. So things are going to be worse. Like you're not going to get, your GST is going to really fail, your tax collection is going to fail so badly. For that, you make one tax, whatever you may want to call it. You want to call it a turnover tax, or you want to call it transactional tax, or make it compulsory that every one of us should have a bank account, and all our payments received and paid should be through the bank, and that transaction, if you want, you charge a percentage which should be reasonable. Okay, so talking a lot, you always hype about whatever projects or schemes you're implementing, and none of it is done, many of it is not done properly. Your demonetization was very badly implemented. Your GST was another failure of implementation, the way you went about it. Many things, though I am for the demonetization personally myself. A few of your things, yes, your 370, your car and your 35A, all that I agree. It's a long time pending. This country needs to be united. But why are all these reservations, this scholarships, which is again another big scam, where many of the colleges like old colleges which are getting aid from the government are still getting aid, and they only get all the UGC money. Like even I have an institution, and I don't apply because I know it's again corruption money. I have to go pay the person who's sanctioning the project. I have to pay him. There's a broker there in Delhi. And your skill development was another big scam. It was a big sham actually. In fact, I have been giving the skill development free of cost to all my students right away from last 15 years. And I don't know what for you bought the skill development and made one big drama out of it. You could have directly asked the institutions, you could have approached the institutions directly instead of starting and all these sham organizations are all in Delhi. And the people sitting in Delhi only get all these skill development money. That's again another big scam and a sham. So, Mr. Modi, it's not as if you don't know, okay? I don't know how many of your party members have the guts to talk up to you, but then for me, anything that is wrong, even if I do it is wrong, and even if you do it is wrong, and I'm not going to be scared thinking, oh, because you are the Prime Minister that I should not talk up. Every one of us can do wrong, we are all human, and we tend to err somewhere. But correcting ourselves is a big you need to have a lot of big heart to accept your faults, okay. So that is why the GST has failed, the economy has failed. The economy failed even right away in UPA, but you closed your eyes. I wrote so many letters to you about the bank scams and you never bothered to respond. And today you're saying that the UPA did. Why didn't you take action in 2014-15? I wrote so many letters. I said I'm ready to come with evidences. So when we people come forward, you harass us. So it is a failure, systemic failure of the UPA and the NDA government as far as the bank scams go. And what action have you taken? Isn't Mukesh Ambani, Anil Ambani and Adani not taken money and they have not failed? Adani was a fellow who became bankrupt many years back, and how did he get all this money? And Mukesh Ambani and Ambani, for whose money did they come? He was in the operator in the petrol bunk. Where he amassed this much of money? Tell us the way the entire population will become rich like them. It is all the ill-gotten money of the politicians which are parked with the Ambanis for the various favors both sides have done, and the commission money is again given as shares, and then these people, the Ambanis, don't pay up, and then they have their dubious ways of doing things, and today they call themselves as the richest person in India. Touch your conscience and touch your heart and say that all these people are not corrupt and that they are all perfect. Stop it, all you politicians. Enough. We people have had enough from you. Time has come. God is punishing us with the corona. I am happy that the corona has come, and this is correction time for all of us. God has given us time to correct ourselves, and if we don't correct ourselves even in this situation, then no force on earth can even help us to recover. And every sector in this country today, the tourism industry is in a mess, the hotel industry is in a mess, the banks are in a big mess. And that is mainly because of you politicians and the bank officers, and then the corrupt corporates who promote. Hospitals are another sham. The hospitals are the most inhuman place. Many of these corporate doctors are fleecing the poor citizen. Your government is just closing its eyes because you're all hand in glove in the nonsense that is happening in the name of corona. God only can save this world, and God only can save this country if we don't open up our eyes and change for the good. Nothing can happen, and we will only go into a bigger mess. And Mr. Modi, you please have a forum where public can come and talk to you. There's no point in you all the while talking only to Ambani or Adani and accompanying an Adani for a loan. No, it's shameful for a Prime Minister to do that. Would you accompany me and get me a loan in a bank? I will not cheat the bank. Banks have cheated me, okay? So will you do that? No. So who's accessible to you? Film stars. You're only bothered about film stars, you're only bothered about these corrupt corporates and corrupt politicians. Power. The greed for power is making your eyes all blind. For heaven's sake, all you politicians, all you political parties, change for the good, or bad days, more bad days are there for us. The corona is only the first. There's more to come, and we as a mankind are going to suffer more unless we change now and change for the good. Things are going to be really, really bad. So your GST, your everything that you implemented regarding the finance is wrong. Your finance minister is a big failure. Both Jetli and this lady whom you got, Nirmala Sitharaman, she's so arrogant. She doesn't even want to listen to anybody. Any letters you write to her, she doesn't respond. She thinks she's the cat's whiskers. Fine. Only again, God has to save this country from these kind of ministers who don't have absolutely any knowledge of what the economy is and what is the practical thing. I'm an industrialist. I know what it is, and we have suffered enough at the hands of the government and corrupt officers. Unless things change now, we are already in the dump. Nothing good is going to happen to us. My appeal, open up your eyes. Don't be so arrogant. Don't be so this thing. Be more humane. People have elected you, trusted you, expecting some good things to happen, but I don't think so anything is happening with any of the governments. So my appeal to the people also, think 10 times before you vote, and don't vote in a frenzy, emotional frenzy. Thank you. Namaste. Jai Hind. Bharat Mata ki Jai. We from Swatantra will take up any issue if anybody comes up with their issues.